White clouds are creeping over the sky. Watching. Sometimes I'm just staying by the sea.
Today is the third session of the Effective Communication Seminar. Last week we discussed confrontive and preventive I messages and active listening. We also discussed to some degree how we can determine who owns the problem and when we use I messages and when we use active listening. Before I forget, I would like to give reference that this system has been developed by other people, and the basic source from which this information has come and this technique has come is the work of Thomas Gordon and his wife Linda Adams Gordon, and their work with effective communication. Of course, the way I present it is my own interpretation of that. It may not follow exactly what they're doing. And we discussed that when the problem belongs to me, which means I'm unhappy with the other person's behavior, or I'm unhappy with the situation which I'm experiencing in life, that what I need to do is to make an I message expressing to the people around me what I am feeling, what I need, what my beliefs and reactions are. And when I see that someone else is disturbed, either with my behavior or with something else which is going on in their lives, then the appropriate means of communication is active listening. Today we're going to discuss the third possibility, and that is that our lives are in some way connected, at least at the present, and we're both not feeling content with what is going on. That is, that we have a conflict. Now, there are two kinds of conflicts, as we mentioned last week. One kind is a need conflict, and the other is a values conflict. Today, we're going to discuss need conflicts, and in the future, value conflicts. Let me speak about some of the need conflicts that I have observed in people over the years. One conflict arises over the subject of communication itself. For example, a pattern that we see often, without wanting to put people into certain roles, is that women have more need for communication, verbal, than men. But this could not be, it could be opposite. I mean, it's just that this is a pattern which we see. Now, the person who has a greater need for verbal communication may at some times pressure the other person who has less need, and the other person feeling pressured starts to manifest defense mechanisms. He may avoid communication, may be abrupt, may give superficial kinds of answers, may hide behind the newspaper or the television, not giving one's attention. This causes the person who needs that verbal contact to feel rejected, and that rejection creates a greater need for attention, which is interpreted through the verbal attention, and a greater pressure, perhaps complaining or accusing the other or being negative, which causes the other to be even more defensive in order to protect himself from the danger of having to communicate more than he wants to or she wants to. And this creates a vicious circle in which these two people all become further and further apart rather than uniting. Now, usually in these cases, the harmony and the truth exist somewhere between them. That one needs to learn to feel unity with the other or to solve one's problems without having to speak so much. and the other needs to learn to be more expressive and more open in his communication. So I would not like to say this person is correct and this person is not correct. Usually when two people get into such a situation, both of them have something to learn, and that is one to come towards the other. Another conflict which I've seen frequently, a need conflict, is the need for order and cleanliness. Inevitably, in any group of persons, a family situation or even office situation, one person is going to have a greater need for orderliness and cleanliness than the others. Is not going to be able to feel relaxed or at ease in an environment in which things are not as orderly or as clean as he needs them to be in order to feel comfortable with himself. This inevitably will cause him to begin to pressure the others in subtle or in gross ways, in which they start to feel suppressed. In that suppression, they begin to react. They may even become more negligent in order to affirm in a certain way their freedom. That causes the person who needs this order for his own peace of mind to feel rejected, abused. Often he will start doing these things by himself, and as he cleans and puts order by himself, feeling this grudge within himself or herself towards the others, becoming negative towards them. And this causes the others not only to react in this way, but also to become lazy, because this person always is one step ahead of them in keeping order or cleanliness. So we see many conflicts arising, especially between parents and adolescent children, or parents and children or spouses on this point. One person needing greater order and cleanliness than others. Another area of conflict which I have observed in couples especially is how to raise our children. One may have a stance that we need to control them, to know what they're doing all the time, to limit their activities, to limit the persons they can have friendship with or what they can do. The other may believe in greater freedom. And so what happens? The person who believes that we must control, seeing the lack of control by the other parent, feels a greater need out of his insecurity to control even more than he would have if it wasn't for this rather lackadaisical or laissez-faire attitude of the second parent. And the second parent, seeing the overbearing need of the other to control, steps back even more. And they get into completely opposite roles. If one of the parents were missing, then either of them would be more in the center on this issue, and less at one end or the other. So the attitude of the one creates the attitude of the other. Another area which I've seen conflict come up is the need for sex and affection in couples. At some point, the need for sex or affection in one diminishes more rapidly than in the other. Or one may go through certain phases where one has less need. The other then feels rejection, that, maybe this person doesn't love me, feels a lack of affirmation through this lack of response on the part of the other. That creates a need to pressure the other into responding, which creates fear in the one who has less need, that he's going to be pressured into doing something he does not feel comfortable with at this point in his or her life, which creates even greater rejection in the one who needs more contact. And this vicious circle comes about. And often, in these situations, they confuse affection with sex, and even affection is cut off, when there could be affection without the sexual act. But because they're put together, and this person fears that, well, if I allow affection, it's going to lead towards sexual feelings, then he just cuts off all affectionate contact. And we have a need conflict. One needs this contact, the other needs not to have this contact at this point. Another area in which I've seen these kinds of conflicts is in the need for social contact. This often happens frequently to members of Harmonic Izui, in which coming here they feel less need for social contact, many people, but the spouse or the family in general doesn't feel that lessening of the need. And so there's a conflict of how many times a week we want to gather people at our house or go out. One has a greater need than the other. And how do we solve these problems? Another area is money. Do we spend it now on a vacation? Do we invest it in some kind of land or a house or a car? Do we put it in the bank for the future? Frequently, people who have a common account, a common source of money, may not agree on what they must do with the money which is available to them. It's a conflict of needs. Then we have these roles in which people get into. The role of the victim and the abuser. The more one plays the victim, the more the other gets into the role of the abuser. And people get into these games of playing with each other. Another area of conflict is how much time and energy one should give to his or her profession, and how much time or energy one should give to the home or the family. I mean, frequently men will believe that women must be at home all the time, or women will have the complaint that the man is at work too many hours and not giving enough attention to the children or to the home or to themselves. And so we have here a conflict in needs concerning profession and contact at the home. Often behind all of these need conflicts is another need, and that is simply the need for power or for affirmation. Sometimes when we get down to the nitty-gritty analysis of why is this so important to me, we begin to realize that it's not the issue itself which is so important, the specific theme, but it's who is right. Who is going to become affirmed by getting his way? There's two things. It's a power game and a who is right game. So one may get caught into how we should raise our children, not because his values are so definite and clear about that, but he feels that he must be shown to be right in this concern. Or in other cases, that he must have the power. His word must become reality in this situation. Now, my experience is that these need conflicts are given to us by life, not accidentally. I see all of this in the greater scope of evolution, and that life gives to us persons who conflict with us on specific issues because we have something that we need to learn on this issue. Sometimes it may be to become more moderate. Other times it may be simply to be very stable about our position. Other times it may be to learn how to communicate more effectively in these situations. My experience is that it's difficult for me ever to say, in this situation I believe that you are right and you are wrong. I can always see the reasoning and the feelings and the psychology of both parties in these situations. So what I would suggest is that we approach these situations as learning experiences and try to see two things. What can I learn from this? And how can I communicate most effectively with the other person? When I say effectively, I don't mean how can I communicate in a way in order to force the other into doing what I want. That's not what I mean by effectively. I mean that I am able to clearly make the other person understand what I need and what I believe. From there on, if he agrees or not, it's his own right. That's not the goal. The goal is for him to understand clearly, without any kind of misconceptions. And also for me to understand what he needs and is feeling. And to see the issues behind the superficial issues. The real issues of affirmation, of self-love, of self-respect, of mutual respect between people. That is, I am demanding this not because I need it so much, but because through that I get the message that you respect me, or that you love me, or that you care for me, or that I am worthy. So it's an opportunity to see the deeper issues which exist in these situations. So, some possible I messages, rather some possible introductions to I messages concerning such needs, that is, declarative I messages. I have written some here from my experience with certain situations. I have a problem. It's very important that when we approach the other person, that we approach him with this basic message that the problem is mine. I'm taking responsibility. I'm not saying that you have a problem and I'm coming to help you, because that makes people turn off completely. I have a problem. My security depends on the amount of money we have, and when I think of you spending it on a new car now, I feel insecure. I don't say that you're being irresponsible, you're being insensitive, you're crazy with this idea to buy this new car. That's a you message. That's not important. What's important is that I feel insecure. That's my problem. That's an I message. That makes me react negatively towards you. Would you like to discuss it? So that's an opening, and then we start with some active listening, or we explain in greater detail what it is that is bothering us. Another possibility, a man to his wife. I am feeling angry when I see you talking with other men. It seems that I feel insecure and doubt whether you really love me. Few men have the guts to say something like this to their wives. My fear of being alone arouses negative feelings towards you when you give attention to others. Would you like to discuss it? So this is, it takes a lot of strength for someone to be so honest and so clear about his fears, his self-doubts. But this is the power of the I message. Then there's no confusion. If this man comes on to his wife with all kinds of aggressive communication, she's not going to understand what's going on. She's just going to feel rejected and be pushed away from him. Another possibility. Dear, I'm not happy with our relationship. I feel that my feelings, thoughts, and needs are not taken into consideration. When I feel that way, I get moody, complain, criticize, and even try to hurt you. I don't want this anymore. Let's sit down and discuss what you want and what I want and find a harmonious solution for both. So these are openings for situations in which we feel that our needs are not being met. Someone's buying a car with money which half of it belongs to us, and we're upset about it. Our spouse is giving attention to other persons, and we're insecure. We're not receiving the attention that we need in a relationship. Another possibility on an invitation to go out. I feel an inner conflict concerning your invitation to dinner. On the one hand, I love you and care to continue our relationship. On the other, I really feel the need to be at home, to read, to relax. I choose to stay at home, but would like to get together with you some other day or in the near future and communicate. This message that I feel conflict is a message that I feel that I need to give frequently. When people ask me for something, and I care for that person, and I would like that person to be happy, and I would like to be able to give him or her what he or she is asking, but I'm not able to. And so in those situations, I find that it's frequently to have a conflict. I see that you're asking for this, I would like to satisfy this need, but for these reasons, I cannot. I'm not in the position to do it, whatever those reasons may be. It's important to express that conflict, because when we just simply say no, the other person simply gets the message that we don't care, or that we don't love them. And this is a programming which exists in all of us, that when we ask for something and are not given that, that is because the other one doesn't love us. And we all know from our personal experience that this is not true, because people that we love have asked us for a number of things in our lives which we have not been able to give them. Especially our parents have asked us to be this way or be that way, or live this way or live that way, or marry this person or not marry that person, or whatever it is. And our inability to do that had nothing to do with our love for them. I mean, it's like they're asking us to deny any kind of inner voice, any kind of instinct, any kind of personal life, which is impossible to ask someone to do. So it is frequent that we will need to give this message about the conflict which exists within us, especially when people ask something from us. Now, when there is this conflict of needs, Gordon and many other persons who work with effective communication suggest the 6-step no-lose method for solving problems. This is also a method used in brainstorming by various scientists and companies when they want to solve problems in a group way. Brainstorming is a process of many people getting together and throwing out ideas, writing them down until they find solutions. So this is a way to find solutions when we have a conflict of needs in which no one loses and no one wins 100%. That is, each person's needs may be satisfied to some degree. It's not a situation in which one person wins, what I want happens, and what the other person wants does not happen. So how is this process? First of all, we define the problem in terms of needs. It's very important that it's defined in terms of needs only. Frequently I will have a family come, or a parent and child, or a couple, and they will start out, and he did this, and he did that, and he is like this, and he is like that, and I say, stop. Everyone take out a piece of paper and write down what you need from the other person. I don't want to hear any history. It's not important to me who did what to whom. I want to know today, what do you need from the other person? It's very important when we're working with this process to stay in the present and not to get into the past and what each did and did not do. But for each person to realize, what is it that I need from my child? What is it that I need from my spouse or from my parent? Now, this process of discovering needs is not easy for many people because they have never really thought about it in this way. And they need help. And often we have to help them when they express something to find the need behind that. For example, that I want my wife never to leave the house when I'm there, which is something I've heard frequently from Greek men. Well, what is the need that you have behind that? And what is the need of the wife to leave the house? What is it she needs to do? What does that satisfy within her? And what is satisfied within him by knowing that she is at home? You see? So when we're looking at needs, we need to look at the needs behind the needs, and sometimes the needs behind the needs behind the needs. It's like opening up these boxes, and each box is a little smaller and a little smaller, and we're getting into more essential needs. For example, I remember in some case of a parent and a child about playing music too loudly and the hours at which this music would be played. It turned out that the music was not the issue at all, but it was the parent's need to have control and the child's need for freedom. So, I mean, the whole thing was about this music, and when we managed to suggest solutions which obviously would have satisfied the parent's need for this quietness and the child's need to listen to music, such as headphones and these kinds of things, neither of them would agree. because that wasn't the issue. The issue was control and freedom, which was being played behind this issue of music. So what do we do in the first step? We start defining the needs, and it's better for these to be written down. My needs, your needs, his needs, her needs, we write them all down. And it's very possible that as we go on to the next steps of the solution, that we will remember or discover more needs or deeper needs, and then we will go back and add them to the list. I forgot that I have this need, or I realize now that my real need is this, and we add it. Needs should be examined: physical needs, emotional needs for affection, for affirmation, mental needs, learning, discovery, spiritual needs, social needs, economic needs. All these together must be realized and recognized. Once we have done that, we go on to the second step of this process, which is to generate possible solutions. And this is the brainstorming aspect, in which everyone starts throwing out ideas. Now, it's very important to avoid the tendency in this part to reject or to begin even discussing any possible solution which is suggested. We should avoid any type of discussion. And every solution should be written down, even if it's totally crazy, impossible, even immoral. We'll reject it later when we start discussing them. But in the beginning, in order not to inhibit the creative process, we write down everything which every person thinks of, because a specific idea may be totally unacceptable, but may act as a bridge to another idea which would be perfect. And I've seen that happen very frequently in brainstorming sessions, that someone will throw an idea completely unacceptable from all points of view, but that becomes a seed which germinates in the mind of another person, another idea, which is a wonderful solution. So it's important to be creative, free, unlimited in our possibilities as we begin to discuss all possible solutions. The third step is to evaluate the solutions. Now we begin discussing. We take these solutions one by one, and we start crossing out those which are unacceptable to all or to most. Keeping in mind, however, that at some point some of those may be combined with something else in order to create. I have never seen this work in a way that we ended up with one of the solutions which was suggested. We always end up with a combination, a hybrid of various solutions put together. So we begin discussing the positive and negative aspects of these possible solutions which have been suggested. And we begin eliminating some. And the fourth step is that we decide on a mutually acceptable solution, which is usually a combination, as I mentioned earlier, of some of those solutions mentioned above. My opinion, it is that in this case it's best to write down what we have decided so that we all see that and are very clear that this is what we have decided and that there's no confusion about that. Or, if there is objection to that, each person with his own words to describe the solution which he believes has been made. Otherwise, there is the possibility of leaving this meeting, each person understanding a different solution and a different agreement. This happens, unfortunately. The fifth stage is acting on the solution. We begin to put it into practice. Here, it is important to start out in good faith. We mean that not to be waiting for the other person for the first slip up and then start accusing him, well, you didn't keep your word. He will need time, and he may even test our love and our patience. So we must give some freeway, some space to the other person to to be able to digest this new agreement, which is demanding of him perhaps a new kind of behavior or some kind of sacrifice. It's costing him something, because if it wasn't costing him something, he would have agreed a long time ago, because to have arrived at the point where we have to talk about this in such a way, it means that we've already discussed this at least 10 or 15 times. And now we're faced with the need to handle this situation in this way. And if this other person could have easily responded to our needs, he would have done it. So we must understand that it's difficult for him. There's some obstacles within him, some fears, some blockages which are preventing him from being able to respond to our needs. Otherwise, we wouldn't have arrived to a situation to do such a meticulous type of solution. And the sixth stage, it's the six-step no-lose method, is to reevaluate the solution that we have come up with. It is to have a meeting after 1 or 2 or 3 months, sit down, and each person to express how he's feeling with this solution. Perhaps some needs were forgotten. Perhaps someone's not being very clear about, very steady about fulfilling his part of the bargain. And a reevaluation and perhaps the creation of a new solution. We may have to start out from the beginning because we weren't very clear about our needs at that time. Now, I'm going to give you an example. This is from Linda Adams Gordon's book, Effectiveness, Women's Effectiveness Training in Communication. This is about a woman, Bonnie, who felt the need to make a confrontive message to her husband, Jim, and her 11-year-old daughter, Sunny, describing her feelings and the problem about the housework. She recalls, "I started working full-time about a year ago. Before that, I had taken almost total responsibility for the household. A couple of months after I started working, I began to start feeling kind of resentful towards Jim and Sunny. Not only was I working full-time, but I was still doing most of the housework. I guess I had expected that they would automatically start helping, and when they didn't, I must admit I said such things as, 'Could you help me with some of this work? Can't you see all these things that need to be done? I'm just going to stop doing any work around here. How can you sit there and watch television while I do all the work?' Then they'd get up and do a few things, or we would argue, and the problem would come up again a day or so later. I decided that this was a very important issue for me, and I was unwilling to keep losing. Even after some pretty good confrontive eye messages, I didn't get much response." Now, it's not that her husband and child don't love her. This is a whole thought form, a whole programming, a whole habit of so many years. And it's just that they're crystallized into, I just come home and I watch television. They can't see the house. It doesn't come to their mind. So they began to employ this method, the six-step method. The first stage, Bonnie's needs. A need for a fairly clean house. Need not to do so much of the work herself. Need not to be overloaded with responsibility. And need to feel less pressure. Jim's needs, husband's needs. Bonnie's standards are too high. That is, he didn't have the same need for order and cleanliness that she had. So he felt injustice. That I have to clean to your standards. I'm happy with the living room as it is. So, I mean, who's right and who's wrong here? It's very difficult to decide. If he can live in the living room that way, then who should clean it? So, how are we going to solve this problem? Need for a reasonably clean house, need to be cooperative, and need time to relax. Sunny's needs. Some need for a clean house, perhaps less than the other two. Need to be cooperative, need not to be hassled, and need for time to watch TV and to be with friends. Okay, so each person expresses his needs in a certain column. After much discussion, Bonnie, Jim, and Sonny decided that the daily jobs of cooking dinner, doing dishes afterwards, picking up around the house, and doing grocery shopping were the main responsibilities. Some jobs were already being done by each person, such as making his own breakfast, making and changing his own bed, paying the bills, and that arrangement was satisfactory to everyone. Further discussion about the jobs brought out. Now they go into the second aspect of the technique, which is to generate possible solutions. 1. Bonnie could lower her standards about housework. She could learn to be happy with less order. 2. One person could cook, another could clean up. 3. They could take turns cooking and cleaning up. 4. Each could choose his favorite job and do that. 5. Each be responsible for own cooking and laundry. 6. Everyone pick up after herself or himself. And 7. Hire outside help. Just get a maid to do all that. Then they went into the third stage, which is evaluating the solutions. First of all, they agreed that it was impractical for each to do all of his or her own work. Secondly, they decided that outside help would be good only for weekly jobs, but it wouldn't solve daily problems. Then they go into the fourth stage of deciding on a mutually acceptable solution. 1. Each agreed to clean up own breakfast dishes and put food and newspapers away every morning. Each is responsible for himself in the morning. Secondly, each agreed to pick up her or his own shoes, magazines, dishes, etc., and put them away before going to bed at night. Third, each agreed to be responsible for cooking dinner and washing dishes 2 nights a week. And they usually went out on Friday or Saturday night to eat. So 1 night out and 2 nights for each person to make dinner and cook and wash the dishes. 4. Bonnie and Jim agreed to do grocery shopping together or take turns. Sonny agreed to put the groceries away. And Bonnie and Jim agreed that the last person up makes their bed. Whoever gets up last has to make the bed. Okay. Then they went into the fifth stage, which is acting on the solution. And then they went to the sixth stage, after a few months, that is reevaluating. After a couple of months of trying this plan, Bonnie realized that much of the housework that she did still was not included, and she asked for another problem-solving meeting to revise the original plan. She stated her needs to Jim and Sonny. All agreed that the problem was to figure out new ways to get all the housework done. They decided to start by listing all the jobs to be done. Jim and Sonny didn't realize how many jobs were being done by Bonnie. Then they went into the second stage again, possible solutions. To divide work equally among all three, to hire a housekeeper for a few hours a week, every person responsible for his own needs, cooking, laundry, etc., and each pick favorite jobs. We'll skip the third stage. We'll go to the fourth stage. What did they finally decide about the rest of the jobs which were not being done? Bonnie agreed to do all the laundry for Jim and herself, and general laundry, folding and putting the clothes away, taking out all the trash on Sunday night, watering and fertilizing all the indoor plants, shaking the rugs, and sweeping the hallway and porch. These were the jobs that were left from the previous discussion. Jim agreed to do all the grocery shopping, making the list, and putting the food away, taking and picking up the dry cleaning, calling repair people for household needs and arranging to meet them, and taking the cars for repair and maintenance. And Sonny agreed to do all the dusting of the wooden furniture in the house, watering some of the outdoor plants, her own laundry, and cleaning her own room. So, I don't know what's happening with this family now, but at least at that time, they all seemed to be very satisfied that they could find a solution which was fair. people want to be fair. When we approach them in an accusive way, in an aggressive way, accusing them of not being okay, that enables them to get into a state of mind in which they stop caring about being fair. The natural desire of persons is to live in a fair relationship with loved ones. I'll give you one more example. This is one from one of our seminars quite a number of years ago. It's an example of Mary and George, a couple. Mary is at home all day, cleaning and keeping the house. George is a engineer, civil engineer, who comes home frequently with his boots and shoes covered with mud. And he often distracts that mud right into the house after Mary has cleaned the house. So she has this complaint that you're not respecting all of the work that I have done. And another thing that George used to do was he would water the plants outside and would water them with too much water and then track that water into the house. And so this became an issue, but the issue wasn't so much the cleanliness, as you can understand, it's the respect. That is, Mary felt that you're not respecting me. I mean, I'm doing all of this and you're just stepping right on it with your mud. And for George it was, I'm so tired when I come home, and this is my house, and I'm making so much money and supplying all this money for all of us to live, and I can't do what I want in my own house. I can't have the freedom to walk in with the shoes that I like, or the freedom to water the plants in the way I like. So it's an issue of respect and freedom and self-worth on both parts. That what kind of man am I if I can't do what I want in my own house? And for her, what kind of woman am I if I'm just going to be a slave who's going to clean and no one's going to respect that? So when we see the deeper issues in both of these situations, it's a matter of one's own self-image, which is being limited by the other's reactions. So we sat down as a group and people began to throw out ideas. One other issue was that she was tired, in addition to all this cleaning, she was also tired of cooking and taking care of the children all day. So one suggestion was that they eat out. Another was that George remove his shoes before he goes into the house. Another, that Mary not get angry, that she just accept that. Another would be that they would have separate shoes or sandals. Take off his shoes and wear these other shoes or sandals as he went into the house. Another solution was for her to let the house be dirty, not to clean it, or to clean the shoes as he came home so that he could walk in with those shoes. Another solution was that he could be more careful, that they could put towels underneath the plants that would absorb the water when he watered them, or that he could use less water as he watered them, or they could give the plants away, not have them, or that Mary could water the plants. And one last suggestion was that George just not go into the house at all. And so the solutions that they came up with was that for George to remove his shoes, for Mary to try to be less angry in general, to be more careful in watering the plants, to put towels underneath the pots, and for him to use less water when he watered the plants. But really the issue wasn't that. Because when we came back after a few weeks, the problem was still there, not because there was no solution, but because that was not the problem. The problem was each person's own self-image, and the need to ask from the other certain kinds of behavior in order to feel one's self-worth. Some people may side with the one, others may side with the other. That's all a matter of our own programming. So in effective communication, it's not only learning to communicate these needs effectively, but it's also being able to learn the lessons which life is trying to teach us through these situations, and that is to have enough sense of self-worth that the other person's behavior does not cause that to come into doubt so easily. that is to be more sure of ourselves. So for this week, I would like you to think about situations in which you might employ this 6-step no-lose method. I believe that this could be used in a general family setting in which the family could sit down once a week or once a month without having any specific problems, and everyone just express their needs and their feelings, and if that leads to any kinds of changes in the living conditions, then that would be very nice. And I think that it would be very good for families to have this time in which they get together, not have to wait until crisis to be created, but let it be a habit of each person expressing what he is feeling, how he is feeling, what needs he or she has, which may not be being fulfilled completely at this point in the family setting. Any questions about this point of conflict, needs of conflict of needs, need conflicts? Do you have any questions about this issue? Okay, then we can make our group and discuss the declarative and the preventive messages, which I asked you to write last week, and check out if these messages are really I messages or you messages, or if we have left out some information which would be important for the other person to hear in making out those messages. Okay?